by now you guys have all I'm sure by now you've received a letter from my attorney in reference to your guys' intentions of not paying vendors of the sheriff's office, and that there's outstanding invoices that have yet to be paid. On 6/7 of 23, I sent you a letter complete with explanation of how these items purchased were used and deployed for official use by paid employees or volunteers whose purpose is solely to support the office of sheriff. Your continued willfulness not to pay these and possibly future expenditures of the sheriff's office does nothing more than stifle the operations of the sheriff's office. Not only does it stifle the operations of the sheriff's office, it has a direct effect on small businesses that we do business with. I've spoken with several of these vendors, and they are prepared to file a lawsuit against the commission to get the court to get paid. As stated in the letter from my legal counsel, this is nothing more than an overreach by the county commission, and the people of Bates County deserve better from its elected officials. I will restate what I said in my June 6th letter. I have an obligation to the citizens of Bates County to make sure that the sheriff's office is equipped to handle any and all emergencies and law enforcement needs that arise in our community. My obligation is not only to keep citizens safe, but also the men and women of the sheriff's office, whether they're paid or whether they're volunteers. It is quite obvious that you've taken issue with the mounted patrol unit, and that has somehow bled over to the sheriff's posse. This will be the third year of our mounted patrol unit now and costs approximately $27,000 a year, which is 0.003% of my budget. My understanding, and I read this on the internet, that cost so far since started is $83,000 total. But that's startup costs. Like anything else, you'll have startup costs. That's not the ongoing cost. It has already been instrumental, though, in saving a 77-year-old. So maybe we need to call that 77-year-old family and ask what her dad's life is worth. I can't fathom that the three of you can look at your constituents with good conscience and oppose training, safety equipment to give the volunteers for purpose of saving our citizens' lives. Regardless of how you feel about me or your personal opinion of me or how I'm doing my job, it is unacceptable to play these types of games with the citizens of Bates County. I've watched the aggression towards the sheriff's office begin the day, Mr. Wheatley, you took office, but really ramped up in 2022 budget time, when I received a call from the clerk that stated the commission was having a meeting on Friday and was cutting the sheriff's office budget. A meeting that was in violation of the Sunshine Law but not being posted, informing the public of its time, date, and purpose. I responded to your office at her request, not yours. You didn't call me, and answered questions that should have been asked on the Wednesday prior when we had our budget meeting and we went over my budget request. I strongly opposed your cuts, especially since the budget that was submitted was balanced with even surplus revenues. During the meeting, you three could not give a necessary financial reason why you were attempting to cut my balanced budget, but one of you did admit that you had told somebody that you can't control me except through my budget. Then this last December, I was again notified that the county commission voted to move a $400,000 tax that had been allocated to law enforcement since it was passed by the taxpayers. This again was in a meeting that was not posted publicly, nor was anyone that would affected allowed a chance for input. When I announced the security cuts of the courthouse due to your decision to make cuts, an emergency meeting was held. You had no answers as to why the move was necessary or how the idea even came about. The judge directly asked you where the money was needed. Was there money shortfall in the county budget that made it necessary and for it to be necessarily done in 3 days? You failed to answer her question, and today that question has still never been answered. Eventually, a motion was made to table moving the tax until June 1st to give you and I a chance to work through the challenges that move created. I believe the very next week, again, without it being on the agenda, you three voted to move the tax anyway, even though you voted before to wait 6 months. That stood until our budget meeting was held in mid to late January, where it was brought up again. I compromised when Ken and Trent made a recommendation that the tax would be split in half, with half of it being returned to law enforcement and the other half being sent to general revenue. The county has never been more financially stable as it is right now, whether it's in general revenue or in law enforcement. As a matter of fact, Mr. Wheatley acknowledged on record that fact and stated, I quote, "We are fortunate enough that we have a sheriff's office that is self-sufficient," meaning that the sheriff's office generates every dollar that it spends and then adds thousands of dollars to surplus in the revenue in the law enforcement fund each year. Never in its history has the law enforcement fund had $3 million in cash on hand. I will echo Mr. Wheatley in saying we are very fortunate that the sheriff's office is self-sufficient and even helps carry the cost of other office holders that are funded out of law enforcement. But we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the hard work men and women who work hard every day to fulfill the needs of the citizens, and through their hard work generate enough money for all of our divisions and all of our community programs. On a contrast, many other sheriffs across the state receive their funding from general revenue, and that places a strain on other offices also. Again, if it wasn't for the men and women of the sheriff's office, these men and women standing around us, this county would be flat ass broke. I believe on or about April 1st, you were notified that a citizen filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office in regards to multiple meetings that the county commission had held that were not in compliance with the Missouri Sunshine Laws. But somehow you failed to let the media know about that complaint, but were assured to make sure they knew about me. These violations included meetings that were not posted, agendas that failed to reflect the actual meetings held, all of which deprive the citizens of this county the right to attend and have a voice in government that affects them. Many of these meetings include topics that the public have vested interest in, to include wind turbines, solar fields, road closures, or even the highly debated ARPA funds that not one single meeting indicated input from the public on how you intend to disperse it. At that point, you found out that I had been the only one who requested the last 2 years of agendas and meetings and assumed I was behind the complaint. I requested the agendas and meetings because of complaints brought to me by citizens who felt that the sheriff had an obligation to hold the commission to its legal requirements of the open meetings laws. I did not have prior knowledge that that particular citizen filed the complaint. To be transparent, I did in fact begin to investigate the violations with the intent that when it was complete, asking the Attorney General to review for what he thought was appropriate actions. Within days of you being notified of that complaint, your first reaction was to retaliate by sending the Bates County prosecutor a request for him to investigate the expenditures of the sheriff's office. The request was to start the procedure to have me removed from office. In your opinion, in violating my oath of office because you think the expenditures that I made in fiscal year 2022 violated the Constitution somehow. I've also heard a rumor that you sent that to Attorney General's office in which they declined your request. I've instructed my attorney to confirm that. In your opinion, you believe I violated Article 6, Section 23 to 25 of the Missouri Constitution that prohibits government from giving, lending, or granting money to a corporation, association, or an individual. Let's go over the expenditures that you have taken issues with. Every one of these expenditures I posted publicly this year in February as part of our community policing efforts in our small community. Community-oriented policing is one of the most important tools we have in building relationship between our deputies and the community. It has been encouraged nationally and in some cases even required to receive federal grants. So let's talk about those. Butler Youth Softball, we sponsored $250. Butler Youth Scouts, $250. Butler Youth Swim Team, $250. Butler Youth Wrestling, $200. Rich Hill Youth Basketball, $250. Rich Hill Youth Baseball, $250. Adrian Youth Soccer, $250. Adrian Youth Baseball, $250. Adrian Youth Football, $300. Hume Fair, $300. Bates County Youth Fair Board, the Youth Fair Board, $15,000. Rich Hill 4th of July Fair, $100. And he also took exception to the free rodeo that the sheriff's office and the sheriff's posse put on for our community. And last but not least, that sign. You took offense to this sign here. The sign that says the sheriff will not take my guns, which originated because when the ATF started passing new regulations, the number one question the sheriff got was, are you coming to my house to take my guns? And I got tired of having to repeat the answer no, so we had signs made that say, I'm not coming to take your guns. That's not a political statement. It's not a vote for me. That's not a vote for anybody, so that's not illegal. The total of the expenditures were less than $30,000, or 0.004% of our budget. But let's address your accusations of the violation of the law and Constitution. There have been long-standing appellate and Missouri Supreme Court rulings in regards to that exception to the law or Constitution. It's referred to as the public purpose exception. The courts adhere to broad interpretation of public purpose, which essentially means that some benefit or convenience flow directly to the public. Even if the benefits accrue to private persons, government action does not lose its public character as long as the primary purpose is for the public. And that was the case St. Louis versus Wagner, St. Louis Port Authority versus Wagner in 1980. This very case also allows you, the commission, to give the Children's Center and Children's Mercy annual donations from general revenue. Both are worthy causes and should be supported, but you want me removed for supporting the youth. Mr. Wheatley, you have gloated and bragged that your intent is to have me removed from office. And this request of the prosecutor is nothing more than a political tactic and political game. This request by the commission as a whole is a retaliation after all of you learned of an investigation by my office into your violations of the Sunshine Law. But let me be clear, if supporting our youth and our community is your basis to have me removed from office, then your priorities are not aligned with serving the public. In regards to the whistleblower hotline, I've responded to the request, and I'm willing and prepared to cooperate with the audit, and I'm confident that all expenditures are accounted for and are within legal requirements of my office. If the auditor finds different, then we will be willing to address her concerns and make changes as necessary. I also have received a copy of your response, Mr. Wheatley. As I read the response letter, it was clear to me that there are some factual inconsistencies in your letter. It only takes a few minutes of research on our Facebook page to prove that. In your final sentence of your response, you state there are other expenditures that need to be reviewed. And you provided additional expenditures that you feel that need to be looked at further and highlighted them for the auditor. So, in transparency, let's go over those. 90% of those expenditures have a direct effect on these men and women here in this room right now. I'd like you to tell the employees they are not worth the expense of these items. Water drink mixes, energy packets, Powerade at an average cost of 0.25 cents. These are some of the things that were highlighted by the County Commission Office. Flavored coffee syrups. I think I have an example of that. This, 10 cents a pump that goes into a coffee. 32-ounce plastic cups. I think this offends me more. You highlighted this plastic cup that is a 32-ounce highlight. And I, if you question it, Mr. Wheatley, I have a copy of it here and the invoices. $12 bag of coffees. These coffee beans for our coffee. What police department, sheriff's office in the state of Missouri doesn't provide their employees coffee? You had a problem with replacing my iPhone that I broke while I was fighting a suspect with a highway patrolman in Rich Hill. I broke my phone. The screen was not readable. It was all black. So we replaced it. I don't believe that's my obligation to replace when I'm performing the duties that I was elected to do. You took exception to an employee appreciation week, $34.92 of a cake that says, thank you for what you do for the citizens. You highlighted an employee retirement plaque, a plaque like this, saying that you didn't feel that was an appropriate expenditure. Our coffee machine, unnecessary to even talk about. Parade candy for employees to throw during parade, hot topic lately. These men and women should not be required to take money out of their pockets away from their family to throw parade candy in their patrol vehicle to the citizens to build relationships with the kids. You had an issue with our employee recruitment video and website. The invoice is highlighted. What agency in the world is not recruiting employees or trying to retain employees or updating their website? And then the last, and I can't I can't comprehend it. Employee Professional Association, the FOP bill, $12,900. The Fraternal Order of Police is no different than an association like the County Commissioners Association, the Treasurers Association, the Sheriff's Association, except one thing. They do offer these men and women legal protection if they're accused of any wrongdoing while performing their duties for the citizens of Bates County. You guys have attorneys, and so should they. Many of these items have been provided for years. I don't understand why now it's just now becoming an issue. So let's talk about whistleblower complaints. I recently had one myself approach me. And the claim was of serious criminal violations by your office and another office holder. And I'll tell you what the claim is since we're being transparent. Jim, your daughter is an elected official, violated the nepotism law and Missouri Constitution by hiring her husband to perform work for her office in 2020. The claim also stated that sometime in 2021, she again hired him to perform work for her office. But this time, Jim, you directed the payment to be made directly to the elected official so that the violation of law could not be detected by auditors or citizens. Authorizing or directing the payment to an elected official for work they did not perform or work that a family member performed for their office is potentially an act of fraud and all parties involved. I know you're very aware of the nepotism laws, because you have accused me in the past of hiring family members. So I have asked a detective to request records from the county clerk pertaining to this complaint, and if there's any evidence that it did occur, we will transfer that jurisdiction of investigation to an outside agency so that the case can receive a fair and impartial investigation. At the findings of the investigation, I would certainly hope that Ken, Trent, you two will give the same courtesy that you gave me and request the prosecutor remove them from office for their violations. With all that said, it's obvious to us and the majority of the public that this county commission does not support the men and women of the sheriff's office, and the public can see your actions for what they are. You have never shown any public support, whether it be social media or in the public, for my employees who risk their lives every day for you and the citizens. The citizens deserve better from all of us. Attorneys cost money and are legally provided to you, your office, and my office at the taxpayer's expense. Let me repeat that. It's the taxpayers that are going to spend the money for all of our attorneys. In fact, we work for the public, and it's the public who bears the cost of this. I'm duly elected as the sheriff by the voters of Bates County. You are duly elected as commissioners. I ask that you spend your 2 days a week working to better the lives of Bates Countyans and not trying to figure out how to control, manipulate, or restrict the good things that the sheriff's office does for the community. Ultimately, the voters decide if they believe I'm doing a good job or not. Their voices will be heard at election time. I'm confident. Your attempt to damage my reputation, my credibility, and even prevent me from running for office again is absolutely not how the Constitution was meant to work. This is the exact kind of tactics that the citizens across this great nation are experiencing on a national level. The citizens are tired, and they're tired of letting a small group of people who feel like they can dictate who is going to run and who gets the vote. If you want a different sheriff, then sign up and run a clean campaign and let the voters decide. This county has far greater issues than the drama here today. Government should have one agenda: making the citizens' lives better. You can't do that when you put your personal agendas first. That is my goal here today. Let me do my job. Let the voters, not a half a dozen elected officials, decide if I'm still good enough to do the job to come back for a 5th term as sheriff. This is the saddle pad made by a mom and pop out of New York. It does not say anything about the sheriff's posse. It says the sheriff's office. You guys refuse to pay 2 retired people who custom made those and make their living now for saddle pads. It's disturbing, to say the least. You guys intend to pay those back bills that have been standing due since March? Or do I need to tell my attorney to sue to make it happen?
We just got through talking with our attorney today, just before you came in, and he said that virtually everything can be found to be viable. There are questions that need to be resolved. One, who's going to be using the first aid kits? Who's receiving the training? Is it just the posse, or is it also the deputies? We need to have that in writing. What else was it? There was 3 things. What was the third thing? Those 2 things for certain.
So your contention is that the people that are,
This was him.
that he's doing, your reason why you reached out to him to clarify,
Right.
that the volunteers that work for the sheriff's office and only have a sole purpose of working for the sheriff's office are not, because legal wise, insurance wise, if they get hurt, they're an employee of ours. So what you're saying is any expenditures towards the posse is not valid in your opinion. So I can assume that the free rodeo that we put on in that's scheduled for the end of September, you will not be signing that invoice.
No, according to him, we have the right to do it.
You have a right to not
To
sign
pay,
it?
no, to pay the bill.
Okay,
That's what I'm
So-
saying.
so
We have
why-
a right to pay the bill.
so why has it taken us 3 months to get here? Because all it would have done, and I believe this letter right here on June 6th, after the bills were 2 months, broke down every item, every single item that I had purchased, and explained how it had an official application to the sheriff's office. But we're still not.
The thing that we, okay, Jeff, the thing that we see, and it's not just me seeing the bills. When the bills come in, I don't take them in a corner and rubber stamp them, deny them, whatever. We all 3 go through the bills. Our question is, why is the posse, which is not a 501c3 organization, why are they not paying their own bills? Why are they not being charged to pay for CPR training? I assume the first aid kits, are they going to them, or are you gonna send them with the deputies? We have no justification of where it's going. No, you don't have anything saying where those first aid kits are going. We get a bill for them, and that's it.
Let me read you what my letter said. In last week of May, the commissioner refused to pay invoices submitted to the county clerk. Let this serve as a clarification for payment of the invoices. Since 2009, the sheriff's office has had volunteers assist the sheriff's office with manpower needs to include search and rescue, manpower for community events, public programs. These volunteers are no different than a volunteer fire department for any municipality. If it is the sheriff's responsibility to ensure the volunteers are trained, equipped, and to perform any task at the request of the sheriff. The sheriff's office has the budget to pay for the training and equipment within its 2003. And I list American Red Cross, Stop the Bleed course, which is to save people's life. Allegiance Armory, medical kits, $800. It is very clear, the very first paragraph says that it's for the posse. And they are quasi-employees of the sheriff's office.
Okay, you're implying that your volunteers are identical to a volunteer fire department.
What's the difference?
The volunteer fire departments have to be trained. They're there to protect people's property, people's lives on a continuing basis, and they are paid for each call that they get. Most of them are certified as firefighter 1, firefighter 2, 3, fire officer 1, 2, 3, and 4. These individuals can actually perform duties that most individuals can't. Your volunteers are not trained to that level. I don't think you could ever get your volunteers trained to that level unless you go in and look at IFSAC, International Fire Safety Accreditation College, requirements to become volunteer firefighters, full-time firefighters, military firefighters, whomever. So don't associate them with a volunteer fire department, please.
Fair enough. So
You
let me
see what I'm
explain,
getting
let me
at.
explain to you the
You see
training
what
that
I'm
we,
getting at.
let
I
me
mean,
explain to you the training that
I
we
don't-
provided to the
disagree
sheriff.
with things. I
Let me
just wanna make
explain-
sure your people are trained. You're gonna use them as volunteer firefighters, make certain they're trained to that ability. We don't know why you're training them. We see no training.
That's why I'm
requirements.
elected, sir. I'm elected to make sure that my staff is trained and that they are equipped with their, I've said that in writing, but let me address what
On
you
the
said.
deputies and everything, we understand them.
Let me, give me a
What we
minute
need to do
to,
with them, we gotta protect them.
give me a minute to address
Go ahead,
that,
sir.
okay? You're right, the sheriff's posse isn't a 501c3 organization. I've heard that on the street, that's an issue. And let me just tell you, an organization does not have to be a nonprofit organization to exist in its entirety in the state of Missouri. So let's talk about the training the sheriff's posse has since its inception in 2009, long before that you arrived on scene, sir. So we have done search and rescue. We have done desensitization with the horses for them. We have done first aid kit, speed cuffing, handcuffing. We have done ground defensive tactics. There's a long list of stuff that we have done in-house. We are starting to contract that outside of house, but we have done that in-house. And as new members, just like fire departments, as new members come in, before they can get fully trained, they still go on fires. They still turn a fire pump on. They still hold a hose. They're getting instruction within. Now, they do go on to get certification, but I don't know of any certification in the state of Missouri that says a volunteer person has to be certified. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that emergency management recruited people a few years ago for their community emergency response team to do search and rescue, and they were not required to be certified. They went through the training, the same training we did, because we got it through the state emergency management. I can provide you with the books if you want, but training is my responsibility. It is not the commissioner's responsibility. It is my job as the sheriff to ensure that the training that I see fit for them to do their job is done. And so far, to date, we have done that or are working on that. I just got a message last night from another posse member that took training of her own and submitted me the certificates and the pictures of her and her horse. Awesome, these guys are willing to do it. They are volunteers. It is our job, not their job, to spend their money. It is our job, especially if we have the money, to make sure that they are getting what they need to perform the citizens for the citizens of Bates County.
Do you not think that it would be wise for you, after getting these certifications and getting this information, to let the commission know, so when we get requests for certain things or people ask us questions, we don't have to send them to you or to Shane or Blaine, either one? Wouldn't it be beneficial
No
to
offense.
them?
Do not take this offensive. I would prefer you not represent anything from my sheriff's office. That is my job as the elected official. Let me handle those requests. Direct them to me. That's why I make the big bucks, sir.
Okay, like I said, we're just trying to make certain that we as a county are protected. Because there's certain things that we have to look at too, okay? And like I say, as far as those of you that are full-timers, we do everything and we do not deny you the blankets. Those are yours. We pay for them.
All 10 blankets are ours. We pass them out to the posse as they're needed.
Again.
And we retrieve them back.
We don't know that.
But
We assume they go there.
sir, with all due respect, that is not your job to figure that out. Your job is to approve the budget, to review expenditures, and move on. If you have questions, which you did, and I sent you a letter, because I get these little notes, like this most recent one, post that says commission refuses to pay this because it's a posse. It's porta pots for kids at the kids' fun show, sir. You want them crapping in the trees? It is nothing more than just you trying to control an office, as my attorney had put it.
I'm not trying
There
to
are separations of duties for a purpose. We are elected officials. You are elected officials. Let me do my job. And if the voters don't like it, then they can put a new sheriff in.
Like I said, I'm not trying to control your office. I'm trying to watch the funding that's being spent in the county and justify to the people what's justified and what isn't. You don't have an expense line for your posse. If you want to have an expense line put in for your posse, do it. Don't sit there and use different funds. Take it from this fund, take it from that fund, whatever. Set up a specific fund, and that's where that money comes from. When you get money coming in, put it in that fund. You see what I'm saying, Jim?
Again, sir, you're wrong. We have a line item called search and rescue, which we build most of this stuff out of that has anything to do with that. Training is training for employees. It doesn't have to be a separate line item for the posse. It doesn't have, it's training is training, whether it's a volunteer or an employee that's standing here right now. This is obviously a long-term, and who's the loser in all this? The voters, the taxpayers.
Yes.
That's the losers.
Yes.
And so my goal here today is I'm gonna throw it all out there and be done. Be done with it. Because it's these lives and their children's lives that are affected. They don't need this stress. We have enough from this national attack on cops, attack on anybody that carries a badge right now, and we definitely don't need it in this small community. We don't need it from our government body. If I've done something wrong, I'll be held accountable, 100%, and I'm man enough to own it. And if I'm doing it wrong and the auditors say I do it wrong, I'll correct it if it's what's the best for the citizens of Bates County. But in 27 years of being a cop in this community, I've never not put my community first. I love this community with all my heart. I love being the sheriff, and this is ridiculous. This has never happened in 16 years until now. Until now. Ask any of the old commissioners whether they had issues with my expenditures. They may have had questions. What did I do? I come over and answered. Kenny, every time you've called and said, hey, I have a question, I've answered it.
Yeah.
Trent, probably have not had a few. But Mr. Wheatley, in the meeting in December, you threw these two under the bus when you couldn't answer that question. You said, hey, I'm not the only one up here. You guys are following this. It's disturbing at the least. I appreciate your time. If you have questions, I would prefer not on a Post-it. Send me an email so there's documentation and I'll answer them appropriately. Gentlemen, thank you. Make sure you get the